meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. Most areas in the Northeast will top on the 60s today. There'll be spots in western New York that stay in the 50s. Look for a lot of sun in the Northeast today. There'll be a few more clouds that try to get in here during the course of the day on Friday as the remnants of Ian try to surge north. Notice more clouds farther south like New Jersey and southern New England and southern parts of New York. Now, some of that wet weather associated with remnants of Ian may try to get into parts of the Northeast on Saturday.
I'm meteorologist Amy Aronson, and here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Couple of cool, dry days ahead of us before the rain gets here this weekend. We make a run for the upper 60s on Thursday. Cool to start your Friday, low 50s to begin, but we end up in the upper 60s again, and we're not tracking any rain for the next 2 days. We stay dry on Thursday. We could see some extra cloud cover. That will continue to roll in on Friday before this moisture gets here. That's the moisture associated with what's left of Ian by the time it arrives in Maryland.
Meteorologist Venus Reed tracking Hurricane Ian, 145-mile-an-hour winds right now as it's making that landfall across the southern portion of the state of Florida, and it will continue to track further north. In fact, looking at the potential track going across the state of Florida, and then it looks like it'll emerge out over the Atlantic, and then maybe make another landfall down towards portions of near Savannah or near Charleston. So we have to watch that very closely as a tropical storm as we get towards Friday early morning and Friday afternoon into the weekend.
Right before the break, I asked what scale is used to classify hurricanes in the northern Atlantic Ocean. The answer, did you get it? It's the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale with categories of 1 through 5. Saffir was an engineer, Simpson a meteorologist, the two that devised that scale. Now let's check to see the weather in the cities across the country. Right now, we're going to start out in State College, Pennsylvania, home of Penn State and a great weather school. They are looking at partly cloudy skies there today with an afternoon temperature of 64 degrees. And let's go now to Columbia, Missouri, home of the Mizzou Tigers. Look at that pretty sky. Oh, that is lovely. Sunshine and a high of 72. And then next up, Washington, D.C., home of Georgetown. George Washington University, of course, Howard, and many, many more great colleges and universities. Some clouds coming in today, 70 degrees for an afternoon temperature. And then finally, Charleston, South Carolina. It's home to the College of Charleston, but it's mostly looking at clouds there this morning with more clouds coming. The rain, yes, and the arrival of Ian by early tomorrow morning. It's going to be rainy there. High temperature 66 degrees there today. And new video just in from the National Weather Desk here. This is from Marco Island, less than 50 miles south of Fort Myers on the Gulf Coast. As you can see, the flooding there, very severe. Water clearly breaching those stores and businesses. The roads virtually now rivers. The scene playing out more and more throughout the good chunk of the Sunshine State. Hurricane Ian's track reminds so many people of Hurricane Charlie back in 2004. And while there are some similarities, there's also some huge differences. We checked in with Emily Gracie, who spoke with meteorologist James Spann from Birmingham, Alabama.
The tracks are amazingly similar in terms of the angle of attack to the coast, in terms of where it came from. The main difference, it's the storm structure. And understand, they're both very devastating. Anybody that lived in Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel Island, that lived through Charlie, they understand that the devastation that these can bring. The main issue, it's the radius of the winds. The hurricane force winds extend out 2 to 3 times greater. Charlie was a much smaller, compact storm. So I'm afraid that you're going to see the damage over a much wider area, the catastrophic type damage, and the tropical storm force winds also extend out about 2 to 3 times as great. So in terms of size, that's the main difference. The track, very similar, almost eerie how close the two are, but the diameter of the hurricane and tropical storm force winds are much, much larger with Hurricane Ian.
What are the benefits of looking back to history and comparing to old hurricanes, and what are some of the dangers?
Well, I think the clear advantage is the fact that we can show people. Let me show you what this can do. Let's go back and look at a storm very similar to this, and let's take a look at some video, and let's take a look at some images. In video and images, people can understand that. They see that, and it registers with them. Just reading a paragraph or two about, well, this is what happened, but they want to see it. And that, I think, is very important, and especially in this case, in that we did have a Hurricane Charlie that came along in the same track. So it's very helpful. And at the same time, you don't want to scare people. And it's a really fine line we have to walk in this business between providing good, reliable information and instilling fear. We don't want to do that. We don't want people to be afraid. We simply want them to be ready and understand you have to take action at certain points, certain places. And if you're told to leave, you got to leave.
Good point, yeah. The cleanup in Florida, it's likely going to take months, maybe even longer. Those who lost everything are still in need, even after the news coverage ends. This morning, we're returning to Big Pine Key, where Hurricane Irma struck in 2017.
It's all too easy to forget about many of these hard-hit places after the winds and flooding retreat and the news crews go home. Our team returned to Big Pine Key, Florida in 2019, 2 years after Hurricane Irma hit this area. That's when we caught up with resident Bob Swakos, who told us at the time his town was still struggling to find help.
Sometimes you wonder if people really understand, if they're far away, what you're still going through down here. If you're not here, well, that's 2 years ago. They got to be all recovered.
But as our team drove this block, they could see the haunting remnants of what used to be. Kitchen floors laid out one after another where houses used to stand.
Everybody wants to move on with their lives, and yet at the same time, you kind of run up against these roadblocks.
Yeah, we've talked about the debate over evacuating versus staying put. The National Weather Desk recently caught up with the acting director of the National Weather Hurricane Center, Jamie Rome, who told us that staying close to home does have its benefits. Moment though, hey, if you don't live in a hurricane zone, all this talk about Category 5 may be just a little confusing. So we asked meteorologist Marshall McPeak in Cincinnati to put things in perspective.
We're hearing a lot about hurricanes this week, and because of that, we need a little perspective. Those of us who are in the Midwest may not be as familiar with hurricanes as we are tornadoes, but we actually need to measure the wind in both cases, and we use a different scale for each one. For hurricanes, it's the Saffir-Simpson scale, and that's what leads us to Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3. The enhanced Fujita scale, here in the Midwest, you may be more familiar with, and that's EF1, EF2, EF3. In both cases, it's a measurement of how strong the winds are in the storms. For a Category 1 storm, those are winds up to about 95 miles per hour. Kind of similar to an EF0 tornado. Category 2 up to 110 miles per hour. Kind of like an EF1 tornado. But when you're familiar with tornadoes, you know how quickly they move through an area. They come in, they do the damage, and they're gone. The difference, of course, with the hurricane is it's a slow mover. And so you get these very strong winds lasting for a much longer period of time. And that's why they can sometimes do much more damage.
That, of course, along with all that water, just a cubic foot of water has a force of about 62 pounds. That is a lot just per cubic foot of water. Why the water itself can do so much damage. Well, when it comes to tracking tropical storms and hurricanes, meteorologists use a variety of data and models to help us forecast where it's going and how strong it's going to be. Meteorologist Ed Petrowski is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to explain.
There are quite a few models that we actually look at. Some of them specialize in tracking where a hurricane is going to go. Others specialize in intensity. And that really is the most difficult part of hurricane forecasting, is how strong is a hurricane going to get. But generally speaking, we have two really good global models, the European model and, of course, the GFS model, which is the Global Forecast System. That's the American model. And they take into account all the forces in the atmosphere around the globe that can impact hurricanes and give us a pretty good idea of where they're going to go over the next 4 or 5 days.
Now let's take a look back at this day in weather history. Hurricane Gracie was a Category 4 storm when it made landfall in South Carolina in 1959. It was the second hurricane in the state that year. It would be another 30 years for the next major hurricane to hit South Carolina, and that would be Hugo.
Well, a very good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael taking a look at your weather across the Midwest for the day today. A lot of us dealing with a lot of sunshine, a few passing clouds, and you can see the remnants of Ian starting to move into the far bottom right of the screen. You'll see a little bit more of that heading into the weekend. So today, a lot of sunshine for most of us, 60s across the Ohio Valley, but we're warming in close to 80s across the plains. For Friday, notice that rain starting to move in from the southeast, but a lot of us dealing with a pretty dry weekend.
Well, good Thursday morning to meteorologist Chris Suchan. Starting off with some really pleasant temperatures around the region with 50s and 60s for those out-the-door temperatures. Afternoon, we're going to see 70s, low to mid-80s, and maybe a few low 90s as you work across Texas. A lot of sunshine. Another cool start Friday, 51 Little Rock. The afternoon, we get sunshine in most cases, trying to stay just below 90 degrees for a high temperature to get you into the weekend.
Well, hi there, everybody, and a happy Thursday morning, too. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Still seeing pretty quiet conditions out west, certainly compared to what we're seeing in the southeast. Temps back to nearly 100 today out of Vegas and Phoenix. Perfect in San Francisco and L.A. with low to mid-70s here in late September and starting to dry out in the Pacific Northwest as those showers wind down. Sending this disturbance today over the Continental Divide. We'll see some rain in the Bitterroots and through the Continental Divide there into Idaho and Montana. And that's the scene from here.
Presented by the National Weather Desk.
Take a look at the beauty of Lake Michigan. Some cumulus clouds in the area producing some light showers that resulted in this partial rainbow. Fall colors are still revealing themselves across the country, like these changing leaves seen on Sugarloaf Mountain in Maine. Now to Midway, Utah, where this image captures the vibrant seasonal changes underway there.
Want to see your weather photos and videos on TV? Click Chime In on this station's website to share.
And as you know, we get some great content from our team of more than 200 meteorologists here at the National Weather Desk. But now it's time to showcase some of the great images that we get from you, our viewers, like this scarecrow taking in the sunrise in Arkansas. I think it just needs a cup of coffee, right? And this High Lakes getaway in the Pacific Northwest, a view of Mount Hood. This one caught the eye of one of our meteorologists in Portland, Oregon. And then on to Maine. It's feeding time in the rain. The viewer who submitted this photo says it shows a male northern cardinal feeding its young. And we'd love to share your weather content on air. You know how to find us on all of the social media platforms. Just search at Nat Weather Desk or National Weather Desk. And we'll be right back after this. It's a fast show. I know we give you so much. Tomorrow on the National Weather Desk, tracking Ian's next move as the Florida starts to assess its damage left behind. Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Veronica Johnson. Make it a great Thursday. And as always, keep an eye on the sky.